order the regular meeting. Monday, March 24th, 2014. At this point, ask Legislator Bernice Spreckman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of contemplative silence for our great country, its people, and those serving it around the world. Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Majority Leader Borgia.
Here.
Minority Leader Testa. Here. Mr. Boykin.
Here.
Mr. Burrows. Here. Mr. Gelfarb. Here. Mr. Harcum.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here. Here.
Mr. Maizano. Here. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Parker.
Here.
Perez.
Here.
Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Breckman. Ms. Williams. Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Call for a motion on the consent agenda. Majority Leader Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the consent agenda with the following changes. On page 2, item number 6790, number 2, instead of the Committee on Infrastructure, that should go to the Committee on Parks. Similarly, item 6792 on the same page, number 4, swap out the Parks Committee for the Infrastructure Committee. The next one on page 3, 6793, same change, and 6794, same change. Those all should go to the Parks Committee. On page 10, number 22, ID number 6823, please add myself, Legislator Borgia, as a co-sponsor, and that matter should also be referred to the Committee on Legislation. On page 14, number 41, item number 6843, please add the following co-sponsors, Shimsky, Parker, Harcum, A. Williams, and myself, and that matter should also go to legislation. Number 42, 6844, please add the following co-sponsors, Parker, A. Williams, Shimsky, Boykin, and myself, and that matter is already assigned to legislation. And then the next item, number 43, 6845, please add the following co-sponsors, A. Williams, Legislator Parker, and Legislator L. Williams. And that is it.
Mr. Testa.
Mr. Chairman, we also have a suggested change, just coming to my attention for item number 426844 to also send to budget.
I'm sorry, what number?
Page 14,
Okay.
number 42, item number 6844 to budget.
Okay, any additions, Mr. Maizano, your suggestions to then Legislator, to Madam Majority Leader Borgia? Concurrence on that? Mr.
Sure.
Testa, concurrence on
Yes.
yours? Excellent. With all the those additions, at this point, no objections. The consent agenda moved. Okay, let's move to minutes approval. Again, Legislator Borgia.
Thank you. I'd like to move the minutes of the Monday, March 10th, 2014, 7 p.m. meeting.
Mr. Testa? And Mr. Maizano also in agreement? Okay, no objections. Minutes approved. At this point, then, we will move on to public comment. And just before, I just want to note we have Paul Rosenberg, Mayor of Rybrook, is here today. Paul, welcome. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, rules on public comment.
Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. I have no cards for public comment.
Okay. And close public comment portion of the meeting at this time. Majority Leader Borgia, I note the time is after 7:30. We have a public hearing.
So I move that we suspend the normal order of business to conduct the public hearing.
Excellent. So, Madam Clerk, if you could call the rules for the public hearing and the item itself.
Notice of tonight's public hearing was published in the Journal News. I have proof of publication, which is available for inspection in my office. Tonight's public hearing is from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Legislation on a local law authorizing the county to, 1, consent to the assignment of leases with Jet Systems and West Air to signature, 2, amend the Jet Systems lease to permit assignment to current FBO, 3, amend Signature's lease to allow an early renewal and provide a rent credit, 4, contingent upon the execution by Signature of a stipulation discontinuing actions challenging non-exempt tax status of its leasehold. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left and wait behind the black ropes. Larry Jorash, J. Scott Dyer, Nancy Barr, William Stark, Paul Rosenberg, Debbie Handler, Mark Toulis. The first speaker is Larry Jorash.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and distinguished legislators for allowing me to speak on this important legislation. Signature is seeking approval of the legislation under Resolution 2014-9 to allow for the purchase of Jet Systems and West Air at the airport. In addition, the legislation before you provides closure and long-term stability for the village of Rybrook and the Blind Brook School District by preserving the taxes Signature currently pays to the county. As you know, 3 of the FBO's locations have a tax-exempt status, excepting Signature and Landmark on the north side. Another important item in the legislation is that it provides short-term rent relief for Signature Flight Support, bringing the rent more in line but still on the high side with other FBO tenants at the airport and on the high side of other airports in the region with similar traffic. This rent relief also preserves an annual escalator that will quickly exceed those increases experienced by other public use FBO operators on the field, thereby equalizing and exceeding other public use FBO leases over the term, even with the rent credit. However, it provides timely reduction while we proceed with capital improvement projects for the facility and further work to optimize the public use FBO facility for the future years. Capital improvement will be done in a coordinated manner with the airport management and the county. A lot of time, effort, and resources were exhausted to reach this legislation. Again, it is good for the county, the airport, and the school districts of Rybrook and Blind Brook. Signature is asking you as the Board of Legislators to approve the legislation in the form agreed and advance to the county executive for completion as soon as possible. We would appreciate your consideration of this request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
J. Scott Dyer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Legislators, Madam Clerk, good evening and thank you for your few moments tonight. My name is Scott Dyer. I'm a resident of the village of Pleasantville. I'm a pilot by avocation. I've been that for 30 years. For 25 of those years, I've been very happily ensconced with West Air and then Millionaire at Westchester County Airport. We've been blessed during that time, not just while I'm there, but long before that, with 2 wonderful FBOs, fixed-base operators at Westchester County Airport, who understood and cared for light general aviation, of which I'm a part. A lot of these people, like me, try to give back to the community. I've flown over 125 volunteer missions for Angel Flight, transporting patients at no cost to them, at full cost to me, to medical treatment around the Northeast and indeed into the Southeast and Canada as well, bringing some to the New York area. Others fly patrols for the Coast Guard and give back in many other ways. The world has changed. It changed markedly for us in light general aviation with the transfer of the lease from Panorama to Landmark. My friends who for years were based at Panorama have been leaving. They've been leaving to try to go to Millionaire. They've been leaving to go to other airports and take their money out of Westchester County because Landmark, they found, was not friendly to light general aviation. I fear that the same may happen with the transfer of this lease to Signature. I would have far less in the way of concerns were the lease being transferred to the millionaire parent franchisor. I say this with many mixed emotions because I think the world of the Weaver and the Mason family, who have been good to me over the 25 years that I've been their tenants. I wish them well. I wish them a lucrative sale here because, my goodness, they've earned it with their tireless hours taking care of us, their customers, over the years. But the airport and the county and our entire community lose something if this lease goes to Signature. It will be a less diverse community. They're great for jet operators, just like Landmark is great for jet operators, but they're not good for light single engine and multi-engine piston aircraft, where many of us who live and work and pay taxes in this community take advantage of that, and we have for years. But I thank you very much for your consideration.
Nancy Barr.
Good evening, Chairman Kaplowitz and members of the Board of Legislators. My name is Nancy Barr, and I am the president of the Blind Brook Board of Education. I'm here tonight to represent the school district and its constituents, including the parents, faculty, staff, administrators, and community members who are residents and taxpayers of Westchester County, as well as the children of the Blind Brook School District, to urge you to approve the resolution which is before you tonight. Thank you so much.
William Stark.
Thank you. My name is William Stark. I'm the superintendent of the Blind Brook Rye Union Free School District. I, too, am here on behalf of the constituents of the Blind Brook School District, the students, the parents, members of the community. I urge you to support the resolution which is now being discussed. Thank you.
Mayor Paul Rosenberg.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and esteemed legislators. My name is Paul Rosenberg, and I come here. I'm the mayor of Village of Rybrook, representing approximately 10,000 constituents. As the two prior speakers in front of me, I strongly urge you to support the legislation in front of you.
Debbie Handler.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Handler, and next to me is my co-president of the Blind Brook PTA, Kim Palumbo. We, too, are here this evening on behalf of the Blind Brook School District, on behalf of our students, our teachers, our families, and the taxpayers, to strongly recommend that the Board of Legislators approve the resolution which is before you tonight. Thank you very much.
Mark Tulis.
I'm here with just a different hat on behalf of Joe Garvin, the supervisor of the town of Rye, who couldn't come and wanted to apologize. He's out of town, but wanted to express his support as well for the legislation. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other speakers at this time?
I have no other cards.
Anybody wish to speak? Otherwise, move at this point to close the public hearing. Motion, Legislator Borgia.
Move that we close the public hearing.
And let's do a long roll call. Somebody had stepped out. Just a motion. Madam Clerk, just do a quick. Well, you don't do it on consent at this point. Fine. Well, motion second, and seeing no objections, we'll close. I would like to just call a 2-minute recess in place if we could. So at this point, we're just in recess.
old school.
You know it is.
Yep,
Back in the days when that was still allowed.
exactly. Yeah, they must have been setting off alarms up in here. Yep.
Hey,
That's no joke
they
either.
probably
Yeah.
you might even had a couple of cigars.
Yep. I would be surprised. My first office job was at a pharmaceutical ad agency down in Manhattan, and there was a bunch of these old guys, and they would tell me, they were like, you know, pharmaceutical advertising. When I got into it, was just when they started advertising directly to the patient.
Right.
Before that, you just advertised to doctors.
Right.
Pharmaceutical companies, tons of money, just trying to get rid of profit, you know, so they wouldn't pay taxes on it. They would do these ad campaigns, and these guys said they would literally come into work at 10 in the morning, work for 2 hours, go to lunch, drink for 3 hours, come back to work for 2 hours, drink while they were there, and then go home. You know, they were like, yeah, they were like, we were just tripping over bags of money back then. You know?
But I do think I like the way the new companies are treating money triple, like the Yahoos and the Googles and stuff like that. I mean, you know, it's really cool. You see how they have everything set up. It's just like, now that's how you triple the money.
Yeah.
How we keep staff happy. I want to work for them. With the chefs and all the different dining rooms.
Little sleeping pods and, you know.
Take a nap.
Right, I never worked for one. The biggest company I worked for when I worked at ABC News, they were owned by Disney. And let me tell you something, man, they squeezed everything.
Did they crack you, didn't they? That's how Disney stays on top for so long.
They referred to us as cast members. Literally, you get an email, dear cast member.
That's crazy. But you have your role, I guess.
But at the same time, it was complete chaos. So I remember the morning that, what's his name, got blown up, our anchor, Bob Woodruff. I come into work, I did an early morning cut-in shift, and I came into work, and there was an email, you know, there's been a, you know, in blah, 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 and at that point, we thought he was dead. And so we started calling our bosses, like, how do we report this? CNN is about to report this, you know, what are we going to let CNN beat us on? There's literally no one to figure it out, because it was like 5:30, 6 in the morning. No one could figure it out. Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, well, turn to CNN and see what happens.
Exactly, see what they say, and then we'll just follow the lead. That is so great. For a company that size.
Yeah, it was nuts.
That makes you wonder, should Disney be involved in news?
It's changed so much since I mean, I talk to my wife now, and she throws up her hands. She's like, I don't know what they're thinking. Yeah.
And not just fun anymore, not just amusement parks anymore. And that was that guy, right? That really kind of, what was his name? One that they always had South Park and Family Guy, Michael
Eisner.
Eisner.
Yeah.
He was the one that kind of directed them to like expanding.
Yeah. I think Viacom, when I worked, because I worked at MTV, VH1, BET, and CBS News when they were all owned by Viacom. And that was a pretty tight ship. And they were generous. I mean, like, I made good money. I mean, when BET went dark and they weren't doing news anymore, my boss kept me around for like 2 months. He kept me around for the whole summer. Paid me. And he was like, I don't know, go organize that tape room or something, you know? I was like, all right.
And I wonder what he did that. Was that after the sale, after Bob Johnson sold it?
Yeah. Jackie Reed left.
Yeah, Jackie, right.
Legislators, let's recess over. The public hearing is closed. Thank you all very much for your patience and understanding. At this point, I would ask for unanimous consent if we can take the consent agenda, the special order item out of order at this time, just because we do have speakers here that are interested in it, and we've just spent some time talking about it. So it's a special order item, ID number 6621. So without any objection, we'll take that out of order at this time. Mr. Jenkins?
Mr. Chairman, no concern on moving it out of order, but a point of order after that, if that's in order.
Excellent. And that is before us. Thanks to the public and those who spoke on this during this public hearing. One item that a factoid that has come forward since our committee meetings. We understand from our counsel, Mr. Toulis, that Millionaire has exercised its option under the agreement. Is that correct, sir? So that is on the record and relevant to this conversation and germane to the comments from one of the speakers. We listened very carefully, and we thank you and others for their comments. That's what public hearings and public comment is all about. So we've done that. The item is now before us, and Mr. Jenkins, you are still, you now have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On a point of order.
Yes, sir.
On this particular item that is before us now, I believe that we should be reviewing Section 107.61 of our procedure and rules of the laws of Westchester County, which basically states, and I'm going to paraphrase, it says that we can only have one item in front of us. This particular item has 4 specific items as part of it. That particular resolution would not be in order. This act would not be in order. Local law would not be in order. It could only deal with one and only one topic based on the rules of the laws of Westchester County. And certainly I'd love to have our law department opine on that if that is necessary.
To Linda Trendicott.
If there's just one piece of legislation to be voted on, then you only need one vote. If there are 4 pieces of legislation, that requires 4 votes. But I'm being informed there's only one piece of legislation before the board.
Madam, Mr. Chairman, I would ask our council to read the charter and specifically look at the section. The only piece of legislation that we have that is allowed to have multiple items in it is certainly the Budget Act. All other acts that we have one and only one topic at a time. So certainly, it's not that we have one piece of legislation in front of us. That is certainly the case. My point is that this piece of legislation should be broken up into 4 specific items. And that is what I am suggesting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
That also depends on the way the legislation was written. If the topic of the legislation, which it would appear to be at this time, is the contract with signature, and that's the topic of this conversation, of the legislation, then it is a single subject in connection with that topic.
To that point, Mr. Chairman, and that's exactly the point. This particular item is talking about, one, the assignment amendments of lease agreements. In Section 1, on Item 1 is to consent to the assignment of a lease. That would say check to the subject. 2, to amend the jet systems lease to permit assignment to a current FBO. All right, you could sliply say that's the case. Amend signatures lease to allow an early renewal and provide a rent credit. And number 4, I don't see how that relates to this at all. It says contingent upon the execution of signature of a stipulation discontinuing actions challenging non-exempt tax status of its leasehold. That is clearly not in the subject of this particular item, Mr. Chairman, and certainly it should be broken back apart. And certainly based on the comments that we heard earlier, in addition to that, where item number 2 says that it's going to permit assignment to some unnamed current FBO, that would be an issue as well. But to you, through you, Mr. Chairman, to legal counsel, it clearly is the 4 specific items in this particular subject. And even if you decided to do that, that is not what the laws of Westchester County say. So I guess we should quote for that, all acts except acts making an appropriation and acts codifying or rearranging existing acts or resolutions or enacting a code of laws shall be confined to one subject.
Excellent. We will take our second recess in a row. We're in recess.
too. I want the agenda back, go right to the agenda first, because it'll take a little longer to load. All right, I think we can take this down.
You gotta come over here. We can't be there. You gotta come right over here.
Tina, I go, you should start smoking. Imagine? No. Where is the bell? I'll pretend they didn't know I hit it. Where's the bell? Is that the bell? So cool. He doesn't have it up there. in my own office, because I never.
Do one sub.
Oh.
Jane, thank you. What's that? Yep, just going for it. Okay.
Oh my God. This phone's taking forever to charge. It's supposed to be a smartphone. It's not very smart, battery-wise. Okay, Pete, I think officially I'm not allowing myself to have any more.
I was doing pretty good for a couple.
Yeah, yeah.
No, we had those really short Monday meetings.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I can't have any more. I really can't. I don't fit into my clothes anymore.
Actually, we're switching to.
All right.
How about carrot? Just carrot sticks.
Right.
We'll switch to carrot
They have
sticks.
no calories either.
How about we switch to carrot sticks? I love carrots.
You know what? If we're chewing carrot sticks, it might
And celery.
some
On the
of them
mics.
sound like rabbits.
Could you imagine what that would sound like on the microphone? Carrot sticks and celery. There we go.
Thank you.
All right, we're back from recess. Legislators, please take your chairs, take your seats. Before we broke, Mr. Jenkins had objected to and raised a point of law. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for that. Linda Trendicott has our county attorney here this evening. If you would put on the record the retort to the objection, please. For the record, thank you.
For the record, the provision that Mr. Jenkins was referring to is Section 10761 of the laws of Westchester County, Subdivision 1, and that the county board shall proceed by only by local law, act, or resolution. Local laws, acts, and resolutions, except for motions for adjournment, shall be introduced only in written or printed forms, and all acts, except acts making appropriation and acts codifying or rearranging existing acts or resolutions, or enacting a code of laws, shall be confined to one subject, and the subject or subjects of all acts shall be clearly expressed in the title. In connection with this particular piece of legislation that's before the board, all of the items are in connection with the agreement at the airport lease and amendments thereto, and the subject is clearly indicated in the title as to what it's dealing with.
Thank you. Thanks for the comment and the concern and the comment back. At this time, we had elevated then item 6621 to the discussion at this time. I'll entertain, of course, any comment or discussion on the item before us. Any legislators? Legislator Gelfarb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to urge urge that my colleagues vote for this measure. I would first like to thank all the committees that gave this tremendous work and tremendous consideration, in particular the committees on infrastructure, budget and appropriations, and legislation, and I'd like to give special thanks to the chairman and chairwomen of those committees. I think this proposed measure can be best described as a win-win, win-win, not just a win-win. And the reason I say 4 wins is that there are 4 winners will be recognized if this measure should pass. The first is the taxpayers of Westchester County, all of them. The second is our airport. The airport, if this measure is enacted, will have stronger long-term tenants and will benefit from having capital improvements that are contemplated to be made by the assignees of the leases. The companies at the airport, our fixed-base operators, will also be winners. They will be able to do business. They will continue to employ Westchester residents and Westchester taxpayers, and by having employees, both they and their employees will be able to pay taxes and to live and do business in Westchester County. By bringing on improvements to the airport, it will ensure the competitiveness of the airport and the ability to be competitive of our local businesses and users of the Westchester Airport. Finally, the customers at the airport, in particular those customers who enjoy the benefits of general aviation, will also be winners. The customers will enjoy enhanced facilities. They will have the benefit of having stronger and stronger fixed-base operators. They will continue to enjoy the outstanding workforce at the airport. So in summation, I propose to this board, I ask that you strongly consider passing this, and that by doing so, you will have a 4-way win. And thank you for this opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and in my zeal to introduce democracy, I completely forgot to call on Legislator Marcotte to introduce the item. And would the clerk please read the item? So we will take that as a little appetizer, an appetizer on this discussion. Mr. Gelfarb. My fault, 100%, sir. But I'm so zealous, excited that we're moving on to this item. Madam Clerk.
Item 6621 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget Appropriations, and Legislation. A local law authorizing the county to 1, consent to the assignment of leases with Jet Systems and West Air to signature, 2, amend the Jet Systems lease to permit assignment to current FBO, 3, amend Signature's lease to allow an early renewal and provide a rent credit, 4, contingent upon the execution by Signature of a stipulation discontinuing actions challenging non-exempt tax status of its leasehold.
Legislator Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved, and I will pass this to Legislator Shimsky, Chairwoman of the Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairwoman Marcotte. This is fairly complex legislation with a number of moving parts. Sections 1 through 3 deal with specific amendments and proposed assignments to certain leases at Westchester County Airport. Section 1 through 3 are conditions antecedent to the settlement of a local tax lawsuit in which Westchester County is one of the parties. Subsection 4, which deals with renegotiation of certain terms of one of the leases, is supposed to be considered differently, and it's supposed to be parsed separately, and we have certainly done that. For close to a year now, the Committee on Government Operations and now the Committee on Infrastructure has been doing a mammoth amount of due diligence on all of these sections, both individually and as how they may relate or not relate to each other. We've received repeatedly counsel from 3 different sets of lawyers. We have had several times the head of Westchester County Airport, Deputy Commissioner of Transportation, Patricia Chemka, in to talk to us about the operations and economics of the airport. We have considered the relevance of numerous written submissions and listened to each other as we work to parse this through. And on the basis of this, I am satisfied that this is the best possible deal for the airport and that this will lead to a very good situation economically and otherwise for the airport as well. And I will therefore be supporting it tonight and join Legislator Marcotte in moving it forward. At this point, I'll now call on Chairwoman Virginia Perez of Legislation.
Legislator Perez.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As previously discussed, so moved.
Excellent. Okay. Mr. Gelfar, we will not require that you repeat as your eloquent words, thank you, sir, unless you choose to otherwise. But at this point, obviously, concern Legislator Harcum for further debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. At this point, I would like to congratulate all three chairs on a very thorough review. Mr. Gelfarb for championing this on behalf of his district. I do support this legislation, but I'm not going to vote for this legislation this evening because I think how we do things matters as much as what we do. And the words on a page are important, but the process is important too. And tonight we had a public hearing, and we've had a tradition of when someone speaks at a public hearing to raise questions perhaps or to speak against, as a sign of respect that we take them seriously, we would hold an item over until the next meeting. I remember my good friend for the last 6 years standing up or in our sidebars saying, this is an outrage. We have a tradition of holding this aside, and he was correct. And usually we yielded to Mr. Mazzano out of respect for his knowledge and wisdom of what happens in this body. And I applaud you, Mr. Chair, for saying we will work between leadership to cement this policy. The issue is we haven't done that work yet, and as long as there's a reasonable disagreement among legislators, and I say it's a reasonable disagreement, there's no malfeasance here, but we should err on the side of caution and the public good rather than push this forward. You know, a good friend of all of ours and a mentor to me, Mr. Burton, when I was a young legislator, the first lesson he gave me was count your votes. Count your votes, and all else will flow from that. Well, we've counted the votes. We knew this was going to pass, but we also knew that this would pass on Wednesday when the scheduled meeting was scheduled in case we had to hold this over out of respect to the public. So it would have passed tonight, it would have passed Wednesday. And because I think we're doing this in an improper way this evening, you're losing at least one vote, maybe two votes this evening, just to protest the process. So again, what I say demeans nothing from the hard work the committees undertook, Mr. Gelfarb and whatnot, but I think my vote on this is important, and for the reasons I've stated, I will be voting in the negative. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Legislator Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, want to thank all of the people who worked on this matter for a long time now, many months, crossed over from our last legislative session, as mentioned by Chairwoman Shimsky. I do think that this is a good deal for Westchester County that was made better by the very, very, very rigorous process of going through our committees and getting the more in-depth and more nuanced knowledge of the FBO market between this deal and the deal that happened in our last legislative session. I think we learned a great deal, certainly I learned a great deal about the changes in the market opportunities for small airports, changes in the FBO market. We heard some information at the beginning that, that got a little bit improved as we went along, and I think that was really part of the committee process, to which everyone who participated is to be congratulated. I too am in the position of Mr. Harcum. I was very pleased that the chairman had set a contingency plan for if we heard something at a public hearing that suggested that we should maybe have a period to contemplate things that have been said. I do think that process is very important, and I also think it's very important for us to have an opportunity when things get said at public meetings, and really at any time that there's other things to be considered, that we do have an opportunity to consider them. That was why I was very happy that we had a contingency plan of having a special meeting on Wednesday, because I do acknowledge the time sensitivity of this matter. However, Wednesday is still a sufficient amount of time for the normal processes to move forward. I want to say that process is important not just because of being picayune or being addicted to the minutia of how you create legislation. It's important because it provides the correct amount of due diligence. It provides the correct amount of protection against liability that we as county legislators always have to take seriously. I will also say that I know that I am in the minority in this body, but I do feel that whenever it is possible, you should not schedule the vote of a legislative matter on the same night as the public hearing, because regardless of, even if everyone speaks out in favor of an item, other information can come forward in a public hearing that merits consideration. So having said all of this, although I am in favor of this deal, moving forward, I do have to vote no for it tonight because I do think that we would be better served having that cooling off period after the public hearing today.
Mr. Jenkins, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for going through the process of checking the objection that I had. Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, on this particular item, I think it's important for us to start at the beginning, because all of us that were here in 2012, on September 10th, 2012, when this board adopted by a unanimous margin a lawsuit to intervene in Signature Flight versus the town of Rye. And that happened in 2012. It started in front of the board on July 9th, and this particular act was an act authorizing the County of Westchester to intervene in the proceedings pending in the Westchester County Supreme Court entitled Signature Flight Support Corporation versus the Town of Rye, and or commencing action for declaratory judgment concerning Signature Flight Support Corporation's New York Real Property Tax Law Article 7 review of its tax assessment, and authorize the designation and retention of Oxman Tulis Kirkpatrick and Geiger to represent the County of Westchester in the proceedings at no cost to the county. Mr. Chairman, first I would say that this is as a cost to the county at the end of the day, from a math perspective. Our county attorney argued against us doing this. The county attorney argued against us hiring, or for free, outside counsel in this particular matter. And you know what? We supported Mr. Gelfarb and this particular action because we were the only ones with standing. No one else had standing to protect our lease. And just for a reminder, what that lease says on page 43, section 15.3, lessee hereby waives any right otherwise available to it to seek a judicial determination with respect to the non-exempt taxable status of the lease premises. The same clause. Mr. Chairman, in this particular item, I think that we have gone beyond. This particular committee for the last year, from government operations through various other committees, have moved on different agreements, and the last agreement, because people brought that particular up between Landmark and Panorama, had section 3 and 4 removed. We removed them. As a matter of fact, I recall a huge turnout from the people that were from the school district, the superintendent, the various village officials coming to this chamber to oppose us taking out that language that said that we were going to have this contingency upon the execution of the stipulation agreement. So we actually went forward to make sure that we continue to protect not only the citizens of Westchester, the county of Westchester, the airport residents, and the towns and villages and school districts. We did all of that by going forward with this particular action where we were entering into it. You know what? We have a situation here where we're going to consent to the assignment of leases with Jet Systems and West Air to Signature. Something that's in their lease terms right now that they're not permitted to do. But you know what? I thought at the best interest of the county, I thought that was something that was fair and reasonable given all that we heard through the committees. 2, amending the jet system's lease to permit assignment to a current FBO. And Mr. Chairman, I asked this question directly of Jim Robinson during the committee meetings, and he said, we have never, ever, ever had a piece of legislation in front of us that had a blank line for you to fill in, for the administration to fill in and pick which operator might be best. As a matter of fact, the term was so flippant that sounded like, hey, now there's 2 players in the game, maybe we could get a better deal. Really? That's not how we pass legislation here on this board. That's not what we would do in this particular chamber to make sure that we would protect the citizens of Westchester as our fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the citizens and taxpayers are protected. We're just going to put a blank line and say to the administration, good luck with that. Then we were told this evening that, oh, Millionaire signed and is going to move forward with their piece of their right of first refusal. Well, I don't have that piece of paper, and no legislator here has that piece of paper to even suggest that. And if that was the case, that's what should be in this piece of legislation in front of us now. And then finally, contingent upon the execution by signature of a stipulation discontinuing actions challenging non-exempt tax status of its leasehold, that's the 4th part of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to authorize yet another agreement for somebody that broke it from the first time, that someone's violating the current terms of their lease. And our citizens who are expecting us to protect them should feel comfortable. That school district, that local town, that village, they should look around and say, Westchester County legislators protected us. From what? For 3 years, they promised not to do anything? They can't challenge anything? Well, that's the same promise we have in writing from them right now, in a legally enforceable document, according to the words Mr. Gelfarb stated on the floor when we authorized this action. So, Mr. Chairman, there is no way I could support this particular piece of legislation because at the end of the day, all of those pieces wrapped together do not equal a benefit for Westchester County. And quite frankly, since it doesn't say it in this piece of legislation, but as I mentioned earlier, this piece of legislation, Mr. Toulis said on the record at the committee that every other FBO will be entitled to this same deal that we're doing. So it's not $2.5 million, it's $5 million. And it's $5 million to the people of Westchester County, and quite frankly, I don't think that it's the right thing to do. The last point I want to make, Mr. Chairman, is that when we went through this process last term, in last session, and we had lines 3 and 4 removed from the legislation, people would agree that we got a better deal because of that. And I'm proud that we had a better deal in front of us. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know what kind of better deal we would have when the terms of the lease expire. When Signature's current lease expires, I don't remember, I thought it was 3 or 4 years, someone else could help correct me. That if we went to the open market at that time, what would happen? We have people that have come in and they've given us comparables from different airports. Well, you know what? That's not Westchester County. Westchester County that has the most CEOs per square mile with the most private planes, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there are some folks that have a bunch of planes laying around and good thing for them. God bless them. But at the end of the day, trying to suggest to us we're going to have a better deal because we took out something that extended the lease of a bad actor in the beginning is not the way that we should do business. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Legislator Marzano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ironically, I rise to invoke the Rogowski rule. And for those that don't know the Rogowski rule, the former legislator from District 6, we're discussing his district tonight. If someone invokes your name in a debate, you can get up and defend yourself. So I will, first on the issue, on the merits. Clearly, Legislator Jenkins has done a lot of homework on this issue. But I don't agree with him. I don't agree with him because he's trying to find fault with a very complicated agreement. This is a very complicated agreement. A lot of parties were involved in this agreement. As he pointed out earlier, there's 4 pieces to this settlement and this agreement. It's complex. You know, at some point, the county government can't micromanage everything. We just can't do that. You know, an agreement was reached, the agreement was brought to us, we reviewed it, and I believe a majority of legislators tonight are going to say this is in the best interest of the county. And at that point, these parties will move forward with their private sector businesses at our airport. I don't want to micromanage this any further. I believe that, and Legislator Gelfarb has convinced me that this is, in a very complicated situation, this is about the best agreement we can get, and I will be voting yes. Now to the procedure rules. I certainly am a legislator that always agreed with the proposition that if we had a public hearing, people came out to the public hearing, told us to vote no against the item on the agenda, it should be overed or postponed or recommitted or whatever. That's true. Legislator Harkin's correct. And if I heard a speaker get up there tonight and say, I'm here tonight to tell you to vote no, I think I would stand up and take that position. But I didn't hear anyone say that. I heard a gentleman get up and say he had concerns about a piece of legislation, but I didn't hear him say, I'm here tonight to tell you to vote no. Matter of fact, when you listen to everything the man said, I actually think it led to a yes vote when you look at the entire testimony the man put on the record. So, but even so, after the issue was raised, and it was certainly right for legislators to question that, I understand those legislators that are voting no because of a rule that I've agreed to many times. Legislator Kapowitz walked over to the gentleman and said, did you testify that we should vote no tonight? And the gentleman said no. That's fact. No, so for those relying on the public testimony to say we shouldn't vote on this tonight, there was no one that told us to vote no on this legislation. I didn't hear it, and it's been verified that no one said tonight, vote no on this legislation. Someone said he had concerns. Let me tell you something. I voted an awful lot of times here in 16, 17 years, and I got concerns about a lot of things we vote for. There's a lot of votes that, at the end of the day, I have a 70% or an 80% approval of. But you got to take a vote. That's how this business works. And I have had concerns about a lot of issues. I know a couple of votes coming up that I have concerns about I may vote yes on. So, again, I will always be a stickler for procedure. And if somebody got to that microphone tonight and said, vote no on this legislation, I would have stood next to my friend, the Majority Leader Catherine Borgia, and said we shouldn't vote on this tonight. But that didn't happen. That state of facts doesn't exist. So based on that, I believe we should move forward and take this vote tonight. Although I will add, just if I may, I've always thought that, you know, everybody, Legislator Harkin got up and said, we have a tradition, and he's correct. Maybe we need to turn the tradition into a rule. It's been a tradition for so long, maybe it's time to put it into words that have teeth in it, so we don't have to debate all the time what the tradition is. I just put it out to my colleagues in a bipartisan way to discuss as we move forward. And lastly, just to comment, if we're going to stay on procedure, one last procedural comment. My friend Legislator Jenkins cited Section 107.611 of the Westchester County Charter, and saying that said that this item should be split apart into multiple parts. The county attorney opined that her review was that this item did not need to be split into 4 separate items, because she pointed out that it says that the sentence that Legislator Jenkins was relying on says all acts except acts making appropriations and acts codifying or rearranging existing acts or resolutions or enacting a code of laws shall be confined to one subject. And the county attorney said this piece of legislation is confined to one subject. But I hope everybody, when you heard me read that, heard the second point that nullified my friend Legislator Jenkins' comments. It says all acts. This is a law. Doesn't apply. What Legislator Jenkins raised doesn't apply. This clearly says acts, not laws. We're voting on a law tonight, so what Legislator Jenkins cited might be a better debate if we were facing an act, not a law. So with all those things said, I believe we're right to vote tonight. I believe that this is the best agreement that's before the county on this very sensitive topic, and I will be voting yes on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa, sir.
Just very briefly to add to the discussion, I know a lot has been said about the merits. I'm not going to approach that part, but the procedure, and I understand the whole concept of not even having a vote when there's a public hearing that same night, no matter whether there's a no vote or not, and that's something we can talk about going forward. We've talked about that in other bodies that I've been a member of, and just to reiterate what was said earlier, I didn't hear anything negative to the issue at the public hearing. Again, concerns were mentioned, but nothing urging a no vote. And I was here for the last 4 years. When Legislator Marzano got up and made those speeches about votes that were going to be taken. And I remember them very clearly. And what happened at the end of his speech? We took a vote. And there was no consternation at that time by those who are speaking against it tonight. So all I would say is, let's vote on this. There is no negative outcome to it, and there's been no negativity toward the issue itself, and I think it's important that we vote on it and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that on the point of voting on the same night that we have a public hearing, I think that perhaps it's true that we should have a rule that really kind of set that out clearly, simply because I believe it is very difficult as a legislative body to sit and listening for particular words or context of which a speaker speaks rather than listening to the substance of what the person is saying. And so it is hard to draw some kind of conclusion as to whether the person said, I support or I oppose, because if you're going to hear those magic words, it might not be those words, but they might express that in the sentiment. So having a rule that says perhaps not voting on a night that you have a public hearing would probably be give more guidance. I did not listen for any particular words. I think if it had been an overwhelming opposition to the legislation, I believe I would have heard it. And I didn't really hear that. But nevertheless, I'm going to support the legislation because I believe that it's been a long time that it's gone through the committee process. I think that we've had a lot of time within that process to raise objections. And I believe that there come a point where you have to come to finality on issues and move forward. The concern I think my colleague, Legislator Jenkins, raised about the subject, and it's a good one. And I don't think whether it's a law or an act, I think that is a valid concern, whether or not. But I think that, and I asked the county attorney in terms of whether or not there's a definition of one subject within the context of the statute, and she did not have one. So for me personally, I would refer back to, in the law, there's something called transaction or occurrences where you would look at a piece of legislation, or you'd look at a law, or you'd look at some actions and read the context within which they're occurring from the same transactions. So even though you might have multiple pieces, if they come from the same transaction, they can stand together versus standing apart. And it is that context of which I believe that the four parts of this legislation kind of come together. My concern was with respect to item number 4, because item number 4 appears not to be germane to the other 3 items. But from discussions with the county attorney, my understanding is that that is a necessary contingency on the other terms. In other words, that was a part of the negotiations, I imagine. That was part of the agreement that's being reached. And so I accept that as being a factual statement, and I will vote on that, accept on that representation. As I said, I am more concerned about moving forward because of the length of time. I believe that we have had enough time. We needed to really ask these questions. We needed to get the answers. If we were standing here saying that we asked the questions and these answers are not forthcoming, I would not be voting for this, because I believe that legislators' questions need to be answered. But having heard that as with respect to the items that have been raised, I can't find personally an objection within which I will stand in the way of the legislation being enacted. So I will support it on those grounds.
I've been involved in this process now for 83 days. I wasn't here for last year, but I understand a lot of activity took place, as I tried to look at this proposal, it is extremely complex. In fact, I drew a lot of boxes when I first set in and tried to follow the assignments and all the parties to the assignment. It is complex. Thank you. What this does is it is an assignment. It amends an existing lease agreement. It removes some litigation threats. But what we're getting here is improvements to our airport. We're getting economic viability, job creation, and I think the residents of Westchester County are ultimately going to be the winners. The marketplace is changing, and we as legislators have to understand the changes that take place in the marketplace and be able to move forward as things come in front of us and vote how we think. And I think that based upon the information I've heard, the things that I've read, it looks like we're getting a good deal, and I will be voting to support this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other first comments this time? Okay, second round, I will permit, keep them, albeit brief if we could, but Legislator Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify one point on subsection 4. The desire of myself as chair was to make sure that that provision could stand alone, and I believe that we did our due diligence, which was not inconsiderable, based on that goal to make sure that that provision could stand alone as a good benefit to the county, and our due diligence did indicate that it was. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Jenkins, and then...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Rogalski rule, with the reality on this particular thing, I wanted to stand, and I did want to say to the chairs of the various committees in this session, Mr. Chairman, that they had done a tremendous amount of work. I know that Ms. Shimsky had met and done a lot of work, as well as the two other chairs of the committee, but I wanted to specifically point out that Ms. Shimsky did a lot of work between the last two sessions on this particular item and trying to understand it. And I think that there's still, even with us right now, Mr. Chairman, there's still a misunderstanding that these items that are in front of us are in fact two separate and distinct leases that are in front of us. There are two different deals in front of us, plus item number 4. So you have an extension of a current lease as well as the other items for the separate West Air jet systems. So I think people should understand that, because I heard a lot of comments, and I don't think that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, just some brief comments from me for the record. As I've done each and every time, whenever council is a customer, principals in the firm of Oxman and Toulis are customers of mine. Put that out on the record as a disclosure. I have no relationship whatsoever to these parties to the legislation before us, and don't believe that there's any conflict, of course, but I just wanted that disclosed out there as I have. Second, I want to thank and congratulate the last session and this session of legislators. It frankly makes me kind of proud sitting up here and watching and listening to everyone out there, because it was a real good, solid, vigorous debate, and meaningful and on point. And it uncovered that procedurally we do have some work to do, and I'll take the responsibility to lead that discussion, as mentioned by our majority leader and minority leader and others, dealing with really trying to nail down once and for all what public comment is for, and how we're supposed to properly integrate it and in our decision making, because we don't just do it for the law, we do it for the spirit, and we really want to hear what people have to say and why they have to say it, and then they can incorporate it in. So we will take that opportunity to nail down that procedure, and let's memorialize it. So Rules Committee will take that up and pass that on, of course, to the full board. To the substance that's here, I am supportive of this. I was supportive, conceptually and throughout, but really I think as Mr. Jenkins and others have said, and Ms. Shimsky, this is a better deal. You never let the perfect stand in the way of the good, but this is certainly good. And as Mr. Gelfarb said, I think it was a win-win-win-win, as he put it. You know, there are a lot of parties here, and it does create some opportunity. And interestingly, when I came here this morning, I thought we were going to have a very vigorous debate on the words diversion and equal protection. And until I just mentioned those words, we haven't had a single discussion on either of those two. And to large measure, it's because the chairs, Legislator Marcotte and Legislator Perez, and very, very pointedly, Legislator Shimsky led us in a very detailed discussion with council in appropriate executive session and in open session, making sure that the wind shear, all pun intended, was as reduced as possible, both in making sure that we were doing our due diligence and something on the face of it, you know, was not something that was wrong, and then also, frankly, so that out in the marketplace, other parties would recognize it and understand and be at least not in opposition to what we did. And frankly, through that vigorous discussion, I am substantively convinced that this is a well-balanced, single-subject piece of legislation before us that balances the various equities. And after 6 months and a day or whatever it's taken us to get to this point, sometimes it does. You know, we do have a bit of a deadline, as I understand, from council. We all understand from council. So that was why the opportunity to have the public hearing and move it forward this week. Also, just so others know, for the record, there were at least 2 legislators that were not going to be here Wednesday. We're all here tonight. The weather, we have a lot of jurisdiction in this world. I think meteorologically speaking, we have very little in that area. And it is actually supposed to potentially precipitate. So, you know, when you have the opportunity, it was, with Linda's comments, thank you, a chance tonight to vote. So when it's all said and done, let's go to the vote. Let's have an up or down vote on the act before us. And I thank you all for the discussion and debate. And I think we should all be proud that this process worked, no matter how you come out on the particular vote this evening. Madam Clerk, a long roll call, please.
Ms. Borgia?
No.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Burrows? Yes. Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
No.
Mr. Jenkins?
No.
Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Yes. Ms. Williams?
No.
Mr. Williams? Yes. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 13-4.
Okay.
Under standing committees, item 6634 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations.
Madam Chairman, call for a motion to reconsider on that item.
Motion to reconsider.
So, a motion, do I have a second? The motion to reconsider? Second. A no vote is not a vote to reconsider. An aye vote is to reconsider the vote. What's that? We had Mr. Burrows second, Mr. Gelfarb motion. Long roll call, please.
Ms. Borgia?
No.
Mr. Testa?
No.
Mr. Boykin? No. Mr. Burrows? No. Mr. Gelfarb?
Nay.
Mr. Harkam?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano?
No.
Ms. Marcotte?
Nay.
Ms. Parker?
No.
Ms. Perez?
No.
Ms. Shimsky?
Nay.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Chairman?
No.
Fails 3-14.
Thank you.
Under standing committees, item 6634, Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, the Bond Act authorizing the issuance of $453,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BDA01, Information Technology.
Legislator Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was approved in my committee, and I'm happy to move this to Legislator Smith for Economic Development.
Mr. Smith.
As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, I move this to Infrastructure Committee.
Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This bond of $453,000 is to meet the anticipated information technology capital needs of the entire District Attorney's Office for the year. It involves upgrades in hardware, software, data migration, updating the operating environment, including catastrophe backup systems with appropriate privacy protections, considering the size of the department and the degree of their needs with record-keeping, confidentiality, and so on. Seems to me to be quite a deal. So moved.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, long roll call, please.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Gelfarb? Mr. Harkam?
Aye.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano? Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 6680 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $225,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project B0011, replacement of gas mains, Valhalla campus.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved for Budget and Appropriations.
Smith.
As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, I move this on to Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you. And Ms. Shimsky.
This bond is designed to create gas linkage and hookup with the Armory. This is one phase of a larger operation with a more general series of improvements to the Armory building, including a gas boiler, which will be hooked up to said pipes. So moved.
And with consent, we'll previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6681 from the Committees on Public Safety, Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $9,300,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPS 18 Armory Public Safety Academy upgrade.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved for Budget.
And we have Mr. Smith.
As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, I move this on to the Committee on Public Safety.
Excellent. And Mr. Gelfarb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bond act that will fund the construction to upgrade the existing Armory facility at the Valhalla campus. This 55,000 square foot building is still using its original mechanical and electrical systems. The upgrade will include replacement of the roof, the windows, the boiler, HVAC, and lighting upgrades, as well as providing a shared training facility for various county departments and in-service law enforcement training to use by every police department in the county. A new interactive training area with movable walls will be created. These improvements will enhance the county's ability to provide for shared services, something that interests all the members of this legislature, by creating additional classroom space, creating a state-of-the-art lab to be used by the forensics unit, and facilities for narcotics and special operations units. This work will greatly benefit all the residents of Westchester County for many years, and I move it on behalf of the Public Safety Committee.
Excellent. Any discussion? Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this particular item, the first question I have, do the chairs, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Why is this particular item amended?
Any chairs or legislators want to, Ms. Shimsky?
Yes. This also went through the Committee on Infrastructure, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Shimsky?
The reason
could
the reason the bond was amended, this was a piggyback onto the $775,000 design bond that had earlier been done. The design is now complete. In terms of timeline, it's anticipated that the job will go out to bid in another month or so. Construction will take 12 to 18 months.
It was great that I saved you just for that answer. Excellent.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, am I to understand that the way that this came through the committees is just that's from a process perspective? Is that the committee report and the modification in the bond act was done, so it would not be amended, Mr. Chairman?
So it would not be
It would not be an amended?
Ms. Shimsky?
Yes, this came up in the context of some of the committee discussions. We were assured by legal staff that the way the original bond was designed or phrased, it did not require a capital budget amendment to include the construction funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just asking for clarification.
Excellent. No, as your prerogative, of course. Any further discussion at this time? Okay, otherwise, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6691 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $600,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPL-23 Stormwater Management, various county facilities.
Legislator Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was approved in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I'll pass this over to Michael Smith for Economic Development.
Mr. Sid.
As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, move this on to infrastructure.
Excellent. And Ms. Shimsky.
Mr. Chairman, this $600,000 tranche in this bond is appropriated to accomplish certain repairs and upgrades to our infrastructure at Saxon Woods Park. The purpose is it's the overall maintenance of our parks to make sure they stay in good condition, but there will be stormwater benefits both in terms of improving the quality of the stormwater and in terms of native plants absorbing the stormwater better, so we'll have quantity and quality benefits as well. This is obviously not an answer to all of our prayers on stormwater management, even for the Mamaroneck River, but this is certainly part of what we need to be doing to make sure that we and our neighbors function properly. So I'm delighted to move this on behalf of the Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you very much. Legislators? Without objection, take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6693 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $1,250,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPL 40, stormwater management, various county facilities too.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved for budget.
Mr. Smith.
As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, I move this on to infrastructure.
Excellent. And Ms. Shimsky.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this money is appropriated to accomplish repairs to the area in the Bronx River Reservation south of Harney Road. The stream bank is eroding. This is undermining the pathway to the park. If left to its own devices, it would eventually undermine the parkway as well. This, again, is a project, a basic infrastructure maintenance project for our own property, which will have some ancillary benefits for stormwater management, especially downstream. On that basis, this is an advisable project, and I so move it.
Excellent. Legislators? Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this particular bond act, I'm just trying to go backwards so we could see the fiscal statement on this particular item when it first became a member, it first became in front of the board, and I do not see a fizz that's attached to it. So is there someone that could tell us, Mr. Chairman, through you to one of the committees to say when this particular item was adopted in the capital budget?
Well, certainly get that answer for you. Ms. Shimsky, you perhaps let you know?
I don't have the fiscal.
Yeah, we don't have a budget staff here tonight.
I am working on it, Mr. Chairman. BPL 40, right?
This is BPL 40. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was able to find it at the end of the thing. Right. Thank you for the item. This was part of the 2013 capital budget appropriations. Thank you.
Excellent. Those are some of the best questions. Good. Any other comments, thoughts? Otherwise, without objection, previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6694 from the Committees on Infrastructure and Budget and Appropriations, a resolution to set a public hearing on a proposed sewer modification to the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District by the removal of 3 parcels of properties in the town of Mount Pleasant.
Legislator Markup, setting the public hearing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for our next regularly scheduled Board of Legislators meeting, which I believe is April 7th for 7:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Without objection, take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6697 from the Committees on Infrastructure and Budget and Appropriations, a resolution to set a public hearing on a proposed sewer modification to the Mamaroneck Sanitary Sewer District by the removal of 1 parcel of property in the town of Harrison.
Again, setting the public hearing, Legislator Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion to set the public hearing for April 7th at 7:30.
And I was remiss, Ms. Shimsky, on this and the previous item, on infrastructure. Do you concur with the setting of the public hearing?
I concur, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
On both.
Thank you. And again, without objection, take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6726 from the Committee on Appointments is a resolution appointing Mary Beth Murphy to the office of Executive Director of the Westchester County Tax Commission for the term commencing October 1st, 2013, and expiring on September 30th, 2019.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Committee on Appointments met on Monday, March 17th, and interviewed Ms. Mary Beth Murphy to be the Executive Director of the Westchester County Tax Commission. This is a 6-year term beginning October 1, 2013, and expiring on September 30, 2019. Her start date is February 18, 2014. The committee met, and it was a unanimous vote to bring this up to the full board for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Any discussion on this item? Legislator Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the pleasure, as you did, to work with then Supervisor Murphy and enjoyed a productive and collaborative relationship with her, especially on many wastewater and water quality issues. So I'd just like to welcome her on board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other legislators? Otherwise, I will do the same, having worked as a county legislator, almost exact same concurrent time as she was supervisor, and do welcome her to the county of Westchester in this new position. At this point, without objection, I'll take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6734 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $800,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project B035C Heavy Equipment Replacement Program.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was vetted in the Budget Committee. I'm happy to move this to Legislator Smith for Economic Development.
Mr. Smith.
As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, move this on to infrastructure.
And Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is this year's installment of a $2,390,000 bond to meet the heavy equipment needs of the county. This year's installment will fund a new catch basin cleaning vacuum truck, 2 new crew cabs, 6-wheel dump trucks with plow and spreader, 2 new pickup trucks with plow and spreader, a new tractor with a cutting deck, and a new asphalt reclaimer. We vetted these in committee. These are all needed. The old equipment is definitely in desperate need of repair, and therefore I move it tonight.
Excellent. Thank you. Any legislative comment at this point? Otherwise, seeing none without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6735 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations.
Recommit.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Yes.
The item was recommitted to what committees? I mean, Budget passed it, and Economic Development has passed this out, so is it being, if I understand, this will be recommitted to that one committee only?
Well, fair question. Generally, it's recommitted to all committees, but let's ask the intention of the legislator.
Yes, there are outstanding questions on this matter as raised by a legislator today, and I would like for it to be recommitted to all committees, yes.
Prerogative, okay.
Did we take it back?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Clerk, excuse me.
Item 6737 from the Committees on Public Safety and Budget
Over.
Appropriations. Over, Mr. Harkam. Item 6738 from the Committees on Public Safety and Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with New Rochelle in order to provide reimbursement for prisoner transportation to the county jail.
Legislator Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was approved out of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I'm happy to pass it on to Legislator Gelfarb, Chairman of the Public Safety Committee.
Mr. Gelfarb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one in a series of bills with respect to engaging the services of various municipalities to transport prisoners between those towns and court. We passed these bills in the past. There's no material changes to the bills. We heard from the Department of Corrections with respect to the bill insofar as New Rochelle is concerned. So moved.
Excellent. Do we have any discussion on this item? We also have, so we both committees in discussion. Seeing none, I will accept the previous long roll call. Without objection.
Approved 17-0. Item 6739 from the Committees on Public Safety and Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Mount Vernon in order to provide reimbursement for prisoner transportation to the county jail.
Okay, we have Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you. As previously discussed, I'll pass it to Legislator Gelfarb.
Mr. Gelfarb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We discussed this bill as well. All of these bills are in the financial interest of the county. With respect to the Mount Vernon bill in particular, I note that this bill covers the calendar years 2013.
Guys, we could just have one. Excuse me, we have one discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to Mount Vernon, this bill covers calendar years 2013 and 2014, and we informally discussed that we would like to try and get the bills brought up to date at the end of the year. Other than that, the bill is perfectly good for the county and appears to be in the interest of Mount Vernon as well. As such, so moved.
Excellent. Thank you to you and Ms. Marcotte for these long discussions. All the legislators, of course, on these items. Any discussion at this time? Seeing none, without objection, take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Item 6740 from the Committees on Public Safety and Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Greenberg in order to provide reimbursement for prisoner transportation to the county jail.
Yes, Ms. Markup.
Thank you. As previously discussed, I'll pass it to Legislator Gelfarb.
Mr. Gelfarb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill was also discussed at the Public Safety Committee. We heard from the Department of Corrections. This bill is also in the financial interest of the county, and as such, so moved.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion? Otherwise, seeing none, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call.
Approved 17-0. Motions, resolutions, and call of the districts.
Okay, legislators. Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that there was consternation about the item on the vehicle purchases. I know that we have legislation that has just come into the committee tonight. Mr. Chairman, was referred to the appropriate committees. Not sure which ones, but it was suggested that part of that language would clarify and I believe take care of the issue that is going on with the fleet vehicles. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a lively discussion. The chairs have been very diligent about making sure those things get in front of us, and I hope that item will not move forward until after we finish deliberating on that particular item, which is to modify the existing law on alternative fuel vehicles and fuel-efficient vehicles to ensure that it is meeting the intention of the law, and that, I believe, would correct that issue with the fleet vehicles. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gelfarb.
One brief point. I did not want to bring up any discussion of process while the bill about the aircraft leases was still pending, because I had something to say I thought was a little bit broader than just that. And I've also never spoken about process before, but I did want to point out one thing. Just as Legislator Lyndon Williams made some very good points about how things should be read legally, about splitting things up, there's also a doctrine in the law called distinctions without a difference. It really occurs to me that when we talk about not voting for something that was the subject of a public hearing where there was objection, that really that reasoning could be just as well applied to any bill that's before us that has public comment. It reminds me very strongly of the raging debates we had about the clinic access bill. We had people lined up and down the streets wanting to be heard. They were all heard, all respectfully heard, and then poof, right away we voted. So I think we should really consider what exactly is the rationale for saying, well, just because we call something a public hearing versus public comment, that we have to sit back and wait days, weeks, or whatever, just because one person may have said something, when at the same time, when we have a raging debate like with the clinic access bill, no one said, gee, we ought to sit and wait a few days before we vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, absolutely. Again, motions, resolutions, call of districts. All righty. At this point, then, please rise for a moment of silence for all those listed on the
Mr.
memorial.
Chairman, I hope that we'll do some due diligence and research, because if memory serves, we did not vote that night. We had a bunch of folks outside, and we actually held it over. We actually pulled the legislation, if I recall correctly, and it was no vote, just for
We
clarification.
can certainly check the record on that.
Thank you.
So a moment of silence for all those listed on our memorial resolutions. Accept the motion to adjourn. Legislator Borgia.
I move that we adjourn and meet again at our regularly scheduled meeting on April 7th, 2014 at 7 p.m.
A second, short roll call.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa? Mr. Mazzano? Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Hold on. Where's David?
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I'm calling him. Is he here?
Okay.
Is he coming?